Three. Hello, everybody. This is R.K. Mullins, author of Time for a Serial Killer, A Lifetime of Murder, Confessions Before Death, Satan's Revenge. No, it don't have a daggone thing to do with religion or Satanism. And the third one, A Sniper's Kiss, Hate Takes a Bullet, one of my favorites. It's got a female protagonist in it. Y'all will love it. And I do have a short story memoir out there, a little small piece of my life that I like to say about a man who I credit for saving my life. This is Author to Author, and I'm your host, like usual. Little old redneck hillbilly, from living in the Carolinas from south eastern part of Virginia. I have today Paul Lima on hand with me. He is an author. He's authored 23 nonfiction books and one fiction book. So I have a feeling we are in for one heck of a treat with this author. He also has a remarkable story, a backstory, as we call it in the business. So please help me welcome in Mr. Paul Lima. Paul, take it away and give us an introduction, sir.
Okay, well, as you said, Paul Lima. I've written 25 books, 23 of which are nonfiction. Three are fiction, 2 novels and a book of short stories. And I'm almost finished my latest and maybe last fiction book. So I've been a freelance writer, trainer for 35 years. And so my nonfiction books are mostly to do with different aspects of writing. As you know, I have multiple sclerosis and something called a new daily persistent headache. It has forced me to retire from writing for clients or training clients. I basically sit in the chair all day. I can walk with a cane, and I get out on occasion to walk my dog. So I turned to fiction several years ago when my multiple sclerosis or MS and new daily persistent headache forced me to retire. So if you want, I can tell you about my fiction books because they're the latest things that I've written.
Sir, this show is all about you and your books. You tell me about whichever books you cotton pick and want to.
Okay.
That's how it's going to be. But I would like to say this much. Audience, my hat goes off to any of the disabled personnel out there, and I happen to be one of them, or at least classified so by the federal government. But people who have a serious debilitating disease such as MS and this new daily persistent headache, my hat goes off to them if they're able to continue a whole lot of any kind of quality of life, especially writing a book.
Yeah. So, well, the fact is my brain still works, although my wife might dispute that a bit, and my fingers still work.
Hey, so I got three wives that dispute mine working.
So I can type, and I've been a writer all my life, but I can no longer do the journalism or work with corporate clients. I just don't have the ability to focus. Like we're talking right now, my headache is going bam, 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 I can do that with you, I can do that socially. I often sit back, put my head back on the couch and close my eyes, but I can't do it with clients anymore.
No, I understand.
When that happened, I moved from my nonfiction book to fiction. Now, when I was much younger, I had written short stories, and I do have a collection of short stories called Rebel in the Backseat. That's kind of like coming of age at any age stories. There's 11 short stories in that book.
Well, now you said you've been a writer for over 35 years, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Both teaching and things. I would imagine going back that far, that your educational background would be in English.
English, yeah. Yeah, and it was like you graduate from English and you think, well, now I guess I go to teacher school. But I didn't want to teach. So I ended up writing in advertising. I was an advertising copywriter. Radio Shack, owned by Tandy Corporation in the US. I'm in Toronto, but I worked for the Canadian division of Radio Shack.
Hmm.
And then I went freelance.
Right.
And so over time in my youth, I wrote a bunch of short stories, put them together in the book Rebel in the Back Seat, self-published it. And since I've been sick and getting away from journalism and nonfiction for corporate clients,
Hmm.
I've written two novels. The first one is called Jerry, Jerry with a G, not a J. And it's a spoof of Seinfeld. It's an LGBTQ plus spoof of Seinfeld.
Okay, cool.
So all the characters in it are LGBTQ. The lead is Jerry. Jerry is a stand-up comedian. They're in a relationship with somebody who would be like Elaine in Seinfeld,
Hmm.
and George and Kramer characters move in with them. They don't have a whole lot of money, so it is
Right.
a spoof of Seinfeld, and it is a comedy. It's really a novella. It's not all that long.
Hmm.
I'm biased as the author, but I think Jerry is funny. So it's available through Amazon or my website,
Right.
Paul Lima, PAULLIMA.com.
So
Um,
that's a comedic fiction then.
Comedic fiction. And again, it was like, writers say, what if? And
Yeah.
this question wouldn't go, what if the characters in Seinfeld were LGBTQ?
Yeah.
My daughter is transsexual. I have a gay brother and a gay sister, a lot of gay friends. I myself am not gay, but I believe a writer can and should stretch their boundaries
Hmm.
at times. And I had members of my family read the book to make sure I
Hmm.
wasn't doing anything untoward. And it's a funny book.
Well,
Uh,
my book, my last one, A Sniper's Kiss. Uh,
right,
I said that the protagonist was female. I
right.
didn't. What I didn't say was that there's LGBTQ,
Ah, okay.
and
Yeah,
it was my first attempt at LGBT at that style of writing,
right, right, right.
and I think I did okay. I'm not too sure.
Yeah,
I mean, I got a few friends. My best friend happens to be a lesbian.
right.
God love her soul. She'd
Yeah.
if she heard me say that, I'd get bashed in the head.
Yeah.
But
Well,
mhm,
I've got positive feedback from the
mhm,
LGBTQ community, and I grew up surrounded by it,
yeah,
and I feel, although I am outside of it, I feel a part of it. I guess
oh
right
yeah,
now I'm really asexual. I'm 67 years old. I'm sick. I mean,
yeah,
sex, sorry,
understood.
no longer an issue. So I really felt like I was qualified to write Jerry.
Yeah.
And I believe, and again, as the author, I'm biased, I believe it's a funny book with some serious overtones.
Well, I
Um,
mean, when I my character was always going to be a female protagonist
right.
in that book. I never set out for her to be LG, damn it, I get all tongue tied every time I try to say
LGBTQ.
it. That thing, right? I never set out for her to be that way. But what I found out in my writing is a lot of times my characters will develop upon. Um, I know I'm doing the developing of them while I'm writing the book, but it seems like they're taking a mind of their own. How
They
about
they
you?
seem to they seem to take on a life of their own,
Hmm.
which is why I think as writers you go through many drafts because you need to get to know your characters. They're taking on a life of their own. You don't know their full life, and it takes a number of drafts for me at least to
Hmm.
truly get to know them and to understand what their quirks are and what they're going to do. In my second book, which is called Chronic, a sick novel,
Hmm.
there are four people with different maladies. One has MS, and his name happens to be Paul.
Hmm.
Um, Another one has Parkinson's, and one is recovering, sort of in remission from cancer, and one person is in a wheelchair. Through
Hmm.
circumstances, they end up living in the same house and get on with life. and it's my attempt to show people that there are a lot of sick people out there. And hey, there are people who
There
are
are.
totally disabled and can't do anything.
Yeah.
I understand that, but a lot of people like me and like you have our disabilities, but we can do stuff. And in chronic, these people do stuff.
Yeah.
Life goes on. Just
Yes.
because they're sick, life doesn't end.
Yes, that is true. My uncle, my uncle happened to passed away from the complications of Parkinson's. So I mean, I know
Mm.
a
Wow.
little bit
Yeah.
about that firsthand. And my dad, passed away from complications of ALS, Lou Gehrig's
Okay.
disease,
Right. Right.
which you know as well as anybody, probably better than most. That with that disease, you end up shut in. Your mind still works,
Yeah.
but you no longer can communicate
That's right.
because
Yeah.
nobody can understand you. First off,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
all sounds like gibberish,
Mhm.
and you're just locked in. You're imprisoned in your own body,
Yeah,
basically.
the physical aspect locks down, so
Exactly.
yeah, it's difficult to
Had to
communicate.
see. I wasn't living back home at the time, but I still got to see my dad. And the worst part of it,
Yeah,
don't like it, and
yeah,
I don't envy what you've had to go through for the last 20 years either.
yeah. Well, you have a choice. I mean, you don't have a choice in terms of if you get sick, but then you have a choice. You can sit on the couch and do nothing, or
Hmm.
you can get on with life as best you can.
Right.
I suppose the final option is you can kill yourself, but I enjoy my wife's cooking too much to do that. So I
Hey,
have to keep on going. I want more meals.
I'm a pretty good sized boy, but I guarantee you one thing: it wasn't from my wife's cooking. It was from mine.
You're cooking, yeah.
I was married to three women that couldn't cook to save their butt.
Right.
But boy, dang sure I could. I grew up.
Yeah.
My mom, and my grandmother taught us boys how to
Huh,
cook. We
cool.
sure do know how.
Yeah. You
But
see, like for me to cook, I have difficulty standing my
mm-hmm,
two positions, sitting
mm-hmm,
or walking. I can walk with the cane, but to just stand in front of the stove and cook, my
no,
legs go weak. So I
yeah,
can't do that. I mean, I
yeah,
make my breakfast and make a little bit of lunch, and then my wife makes these great dinners. In chronic, these four people, and I have MS, so I relate
mm-hmm,
to the main character, Paul, but I know somebody with Parkinson's, know somebody in remission from cancer, and know somebody in a wheelchair. So chronic is really me.
mm-hmm,
It's me coming out and saying, look at these people.
yeah,
Because Paul was a writer and a trainer,
mm-hmm,
as was I, but he can't do that anymore.
right,
But he was a motivational speaker, and he tries to motivate the character in the wheelchair
nice,
to try out for wheelchair races because he used to be a sprinter. He lost a race, got very upset, got a little bit drunk, and ran into a telephone pole and lost the use of his legs. So Paul tries to motivate him to do wheelchair racing or join a wheelchair basketball team.
mm-hmm,
And he turns the motivation around on Paul and says, I'll do that if you do at least one more speaking session. And so suddenly Paul, to motivate the character in the wheelchair, has to take on a speaking gig, which he doesn't want to do.
right,
And meanwhile, the character with Parkinson's, she is a contractor. She does, home renovation and stuff.
mm-hmm,
Her young son helps her, but he gets injured playing basketball, sprains his ankle. And the character with cancer, Albert, says, well, I'm pretty good, with doing renovations. Why don't you try me out? And he ends up working with Dina. So these characters, even though they have their illnesses, get on with life.
right.
I mean, obviously stuff happens that I'm not giving away.
Well, of course not.
Yeah, can't give it all away.
We don't
But
do spoilers.
yeah, but they get on with life. Well, I'll do one spoiler. Albert comes
No,
home
no,
one
no, we
day.
don't do
Yeah,
spoilers.
Albert comes home one day with a kitten, and Paul just freaks out. Kitty, kitty, he loves kittens. And that's, to me, it's one of the, and I grew up with cats, and to me,
Right.
that's one of the most moving parts of the book. Um,
My granddaddy and them had a farm, so I grew up with
ah,
all kinds of animals. So I
right,
mean,
right, yeah,
I love animals, dog, cat, the whole nine yards.
yeah,
Um, I do not have a formal education in writing that
right,
by any means. You know, a lot of people say I probably don't have a formal education at all,
yeah,
but it's good. It's there. It works. I use a different type. I don't find a lot of people that use the writing style that I use.
right,
I'm
right,
not saying that I created it by no means. It's just the style that seems to be comfortable for me,
yeah, yeah,
and it, it's best explained as dialogue-driven action.
okay, yeah,
It's the entire books are about dialogue,
right, right,
constantly back and forth. Very little um,
description and,
description or third party viewing
right,
or
right,
anything like that. Very little of that.
yeah.
What is your style?
Well, it's funny because I would say we're the opposite.
Hmm.
I've had two copy editors go over the book that I'm writing right now, which is called Family Tree,
Hmm.
and it's historical fiction spanning 17 centuries with
Wow.
a little magic realism tossed in. Um, and what my two copy editors said is, Paul, you're no longer a business writer. You need to have more dialogue, have these characters talk about, as opposed to you
Yeah.
showing what's going on, have it move through dialogue and through scenes where you show, don't tell. So
Right.
I've
Exactly.
learned a lot in Family Tree. Um, and in doing that,
Hmm.
literally, my first draft of Family Tree was about 50,000 words. And I
Hmm.
thought, I got a pretty good book here. And then the copy editors came back to me with their comments, and we
Hmm.
had this discussion. It's now at 80 words because showing in dialogue takes more words
Yep.
than telling, you know?
It. Well, I'll let you say that it takes more talent because
Yeah.
me saying it'd be sounding like a little pompous person. You know, it's not me. But I mean, that's the way I think. I write. I am a freestyle writer.
Right, right.
As I'm thinking it, that's what's going down on the keyboard. So I
As
mean,
long as it's making sense to the reader, that they understand and that
hmm,
there's an underlying plot in the stories moving forward. I mean, somebody said to me, how can you have a book that spans 17 centuries? And I said, well, a lot depends on structure.
yeah,
Like it's set up, the first two chapters are in the past,
hmm,
and then the next chapter, we're in 2015.
yeah,
When that chapter ends, we go back to the past, moving forward, and
yeah,
then we go to 2015. So the past catches up to the present, and then we advance into the future. So the
right,
book ends in 2025, but it's like past, present, past catching up, catches up. And because it's literally over 17 centuries, all the people are connected. It is
gotcha,
one family,
right,
family tree, and
hmm,
they are passing on their history in the early days, 400 AD. They
hmm,
pass it on verbally to the oldest child. And then when they get to write, they write it down, they pass on their history. So your main character in the book,
hmm,
the person in 2015, his name is Corey, he's got it on computer. He inherited a booklet from his mother and he
hmm,
put the whole thing on computer, and he's going to pass it on with three acorns because there's literally, you pass on your history and you pass on acorns so that everybody who inherits the history plants an oak tree. And the oak tree, and this is sort of where the magic realism comes in, the oak tree, they feel it. It
hmm,
has an aura, it's communicating with them.
hmm,
And then we step back for a moment, overseeing it all are two gods, Jor-El, who is the Saxon god of earth, and
Hmm.
Odin, who's the Saxon war god. He's kind of like Zeus.
Right.
And so they come in and they comment on stuff that's going on as well, which is very important because Jor-El has planted the initial oak tree from which acorns are passed on. They
Hmm.
come in throughout the book in short segments, commenting on action. And then again, not to give it away, but they're very important at the end.
Good.
Because I believe when you write, you want to go full circle, but the lines don't connect. You start here and you go full circle, and there's got to be an overlap. The ending has to be connected to the beginning. I
Well,
think
yeah. If it
that's
doesn't,
very
then it's
important.
in my opinion, if it doesn't have a connection to the beginning, then somehow, somewhere along the line, you're going to lose your reader.
Absolutely. But it's connected to the beginning, but you need to go over the beginning. In other words, people say, oh, I see why it began there because it ends here
Right.
past the beginning.
Well, I guess that's part of the part of the different writing styles.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that it necessarily needs to overlap, but
Right.
it definitely has to lead back to it in some form or
It
fashion.
has to reflect the beginning.
It has to reflect the
Otherwise,
beginning.
where have
Yeah.
you gone? Yeah.
Yeah. I see. When I started writing, um, I started because I couldn't find any books on how serial killers thought.
Right. Right.
I could find all kinds of stuff by psychologists and psychiatrists on how, on the psychological aspects of it,
Right.
their point of view, but
Right.
nothing from a serial killer point of view.
Right. Right.
So I decided to start writing about a serial killer and figure it out for myself. Well,
Right.
I've got
Right.
three of them down to, and it's a 10-book series. Now I created a major daunting task for myself.
Huh.
I have to have all my books must connect to the first one and
Right.
still be a standalone. They must connect to the book before them and the book after.
Right. Right.
They have to have three major changes in the book,
Yeah.
and they must have an unpredictable ending. Absolutely unpredictable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if they don't, because yeah, in the kind of genre that I write in, and I'm telling this to get to, and I'll get to the point here in a minute, or in a second, actually. But in the genre that I write in, suspense
Right.
is everything. So in one of my books, I did something totally off the wall.
Right.
And I ain't gonna say which one, people, because you're gonna have to figure it out. Read them. But in one of my books, it has three separate endings,
Huh.
two alternates,
Okay.
and then the actual
The
ending.
actual, yeah, interesting. Yeah.
And I got a friend of mine, men you met on her webpage,
Right. Right.
right? And when I told her about that, she said, "I'm very interested in seeing how you're going to handle
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
apparently she's never seen it before. I ain't
Right.
neither either."
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, sounds right.
I've heard of that kind of thing, but I've never read a book. Like I've never read a book that does that. Or
No,
sometimes you'll get a movie where they give you an ending and then they'll do something a little different. But it sounds very creative, your process. You've obviously given it a great deal of thought and done a lot of learning and that in order to do this.
I had to have. I mean, because and I appreciate that compliment, by the way. But that goes to show, that's my approach on certain things. Do
Right.
you find that in your writing of fiction, um, ever the need for twists and turns?
You know, it. I'm going to be egotistical and say I write literary fiction,
Right,
not highfalutin literary fiction, but
right.
it's not genre stuff.
Okay,
But it doesn't matter if you're writing genre or literary small L fiction.
right.
If you don't have suspense, what engages the reader? If you don't
Exactly.
have twists and turns, what keeps the reader reading?
Mm,
So the reader should say, oh, I didn't see that coming. I didn't
yeah,
expect that. The reader has to do that. And,
yeah.
like Jerry's a comedy. people say, well, so you just write jokes. No, you still need a plot. You still need a story. These characters have to
Exactly.
move from four people with no money to four people. They need some change. So they
Right.
have to find some success. And how they find that, there's suspense, there's twists and turns. In Chronic, you've got four sick people
Hmm.
getting on with life. But you know what? If there's just like, oh, I went to work today, I went to work today, and nothing happens. No.
Hmm.
Bolton in the wheelchair challenges Paul, the speaker. Um, the character with Parkinson's is helped by Albert, but then issues have to come up, that they have to overcome. If
Right.
we don't have those twists and turns, if we don't have suspense, if we don't have, are they going to overcome that issue?
Yeah.
If you don't have that, then you've got something that I don't know how to say it. It's kind of boring.
It ain't something like it.
You
It
know?
is.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
I'm not gonna say this, people, but a famous author. Everybody knows this particular author. I'm not gonna say who he is, or she is, or what genre they write in.
hmm,
But they have a bad habit of writing books that are 25,000 words. I mean, I'm sorry, 2,500 pages long,
wow, yeah,
and they spend three chapters explaining about a tree that has nothing to do with the story.
right,
Personally, as a reader, I get lost when
yeah,
that happens. I'm
yeah,
done. I mean, if
yeah,
you're going to spend three chapters on a tree that
yeah,
has no bearing on the end of, or on any part of the story, it's just, I call it filler work, right?
yeah, yeah,
And we all have to have filler work in there of some amount, but not like that. If you're going to do
yeah.
that, I
No,
think
that's
you're
what I.
wasting my time.
Yeah, I read on a Kobo, and if I find myself just flipping through the pages, in other words, nothing is happening, I'm not engaged.
Yeah,
I'm thinking, I think I'm just going to delete this from my Kobo.
exactly.
I'm not enjoying it. And and I'm not here saying anybody who reads any of my books are going to love them or going to
Oh
enjoy
no,
them.
no.
Every writer has their target audience. But if you go to my website, paullima.com, and click on the links to the books,
Hmm.
you will see I've got readers' reactions. And so there are readers who have found Jerry extremely funny, who have
Yeah,
found Chronic exceptionally moving. I just got an email from a woman. She's read Chronic 4 times.
nice.
Now, she has some medical issues.
Hmm.
She identified with the characters. She said, you know what? This is really helping me get on with my life as I combat my medical issues. Anybody watching this might say, well, Paul, you seem, quite enthusiastic and energetic. I am simply,
Pardon me, y'all.
no, that's okay. I'm simply working to get on with my life despite my issues.
Right.
After we talk and turn off the computer, I'm going to go sit in the chair and crash.
There you go.
I
Now,
have no option.
no, you really don't. I mean, you don't. Um,
No,
and there's a lot of people out there with debilitating diseases and that are looking for things to do.
yeah,
Open a book,
yeah.
blank,
Read,
find paper, pencil if you have to, the old-fashioned way.
write,
If you don't know how to start with the first word. That's where I start every
yeah,
single time.
yeah.
Now,
Yeah, somebody asked me on Facebook, they said, how do I start my prologue? I'm really having trouble. I've got this idea, but
mhm,
I can't start the prologue to the book. And I said, write either in the beginning or once upon a time and keep on going.
yeah,
Like sometimes you have to trick yourself into a start because the fact is, when you get to the end of the book, you're going to say, oh, if this is where it ends, you're going to go back to the beginning and say, where should it start?
yeah,
And you're going to
exactly.
revise the beginning. And then once you revise the beginning, you're going to make revisions all the way through. And
Yeah,
you're going to get to the end and you're going to say, well, if that's where it started, I need a new ending. And you're going to push the ending further. I've written the ending to Family Tree three, maybe 4 times.
mhm,
My one of my beta readers just read it the other day. It's like they were through, and
Hmm.
I said, well, you may want to read the last few chapters to see what you've done. And again, I don't mean to be immodest, but she was in tears. She
Yeah.
said, I'm crying because you moved me. I'm crying because I'm so happy this really freaking works.
Hmm.
It's just like,
Yeah.
is it going to work for everybody? No.
No, but it's going to work for
For her.
those that it works for.
Yeah.
And this is something I tell anybody who aspires to want to be an author or a writer of any sort.
Right.
Period. If you can write something and solicit a physical, emotional response,
Yeah.
that is the highest compliment as an author you're ever going to get.
Mhm. I
You
don't
can
know.
be you can be a bestseller on New York's bestsellers list 15 times over,
Yeah.
but one person either laughs out loud about something you've written, or they just can't hold it, or they cry.
Yeah.
And both me and Paul both have written things that people have shedded tears over.
They react to. Yeah.
And that is a very high compliment. It's not an easy task to do,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's
I
not
don't
something we're
know.
setting out for either.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever read the book The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. It's
Yes.
by John le Carre,
Hmm.
great spy novelist. Well, when I read it, and we're going back many years, I got to the end and I threw the book across the room. I
Yeah.
was so angry. And then the writer in me said, wow, look what le Carre made you do. He got you so angry and so upset. I won't spoil the ending of the book,
No,
and
no.
but he got you so angry and so upset. He got a
Yeah,
reaction out of you.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to cut it a little short, because one, you need to go walk your dog,
yep, yep, yep.
and I know your head's pounding, sir, and I
No,
highly
no,
appreciate the time that you've given us
no,
for this
no
interview.
problem.
And I'm gonna ask for one last thing, sir. Give us a closing.
You want to close it?
I want a closing.
Okay, well, if I can do a little self-promotion, paullima.com. You can go to my website and you can read about the books. They are all self-published. I, I'm an impatient person,
Hmm.
and to find a publisher can take you a year, 2, 3 years, and stuff like that. I just thought I'm going to self-publish it.
There
And
you
if
go.
I can make one more comment, one of my books, which is called How to Write a Nonfiction Book in 60 Days. I wrote it after writing 6 or 7
Hmm.
nonfiction books because it takes me in nonfiction 60 days,
Hmm.
outline and write the book. Fiction, a lot longer.
Right. Hmm.
But my
Well,
nonfiction, and I've self-published, I've sold almost 10,000 copies of it.
nice.
Yeah,
Very
so I feel
nice.
so good about that.
Well,
I,
people, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to close it out because it's getting ready to close out on me if I don't. I
okay.
really hate to do that, Paul.
No,
But
that's
around here,
okay.
self-promoting is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Again, people, this is R.K. Mullins, author of Time for a Serial Killer, A Lifetime of Murder, Confessions Before Death, Satan's Revenge.